Hello everyone, I'm going to do a book review of this book, Kierkegaard for Beginners. It's sort of a comic book. What I should have done before this book review was read the whole thing in one sitting, because it really wouldn't take that long. But I had homework and stuff, so I read it in sections. Which means I might forget things that might seem important to some people. Or even to me. But anyway, the last bit in there was the three types of selves. Aesthetic, ethical, and religious self. The aesthetic self is someone who's like a hedonist, who just chases pleasures around all day. Doesn't really have any guiding principles and stuff. And someone who's an aesthetic self is they play roles a lot. They're pretty much their whole life is role playing. They don't ever play themselves really. The thing in the here was what he said about it was it's like wearing armor to protect yourself when there's nobody in the armor, so you're protecting nothing because you destroyed yourself by living your whole life as roles. And then there's the ethical self, which is someone who's guided by principles, who is not morally neutral, which that's what the aesthetics are. They're morally neutral. They seem pragmatic to me. Don't have any codes of morality or anything. And they rotate their pleasures. And so that's pretty much the ethical self. And then there's the religious self, who is religious pretty much. The idea was that they'd follow the same radical leap of faith as Abraham, the guy who almost sacrificed his son, whatever, and that they should be devoted to their religion and stuff like that. That's basically what I got out of it. Out of those three, I think I'd go with the ethical self is what I'd go with. The religious self is supposed to be where you're going for. The ethical self's the one that seems to be guided by thought and principles and thinking rationally about things. But then again, I guess I'm not a very religious person, so it makes sense that I'd go with the one that wasn't religious. But yeah, the aesthetic, I see them everywhere. They're the people who are just not authentic. They're just sort of floating by existence. Kind of depressing. And then there's another concept in the book called dread, or based on dread. Basically, his definition of this type of dread is that people are free to do things. They're free to do things dumb. Like the example was that when Adam learned from God that he can eat from the tree of good and evil, of knowledge of good and evil, that once he knew he could do it, there was dread because he knew he could do that. And I think that anyone who's been into college knows that kind of dread, because it's like, I know I can play video games all day and not get anything done, and it's sort of a dread that you could just do bad and awful, be just irresponsible and all that. But it is sort of an underlying dread. But the only thing though is the book seems to make it to where makes it sound like it's a natural thing, or it just consumes everybody all the time. If they were to think about it too much. To me, what it is that this dread would only really consume someone if they gave up the responsibility of making their own decisions. Which, of course, existentialists don't say that. They believe everyone has free will and they should be responsible for what they say. But I mean, like the dread would come, I think, if someone just sort of didn't see themselves as 100% in power of what they do, and that it would happen from someone who lacks confidence and self-esteem. So I guess that's my cures for this type of dread. Because you can make stupid decisions like play video games all day and not work or do anything. But it doesn't have to just dominate your whole life, I guess. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not a natural. I don't think it's a natural feeling. And the book seems to make this the idea of dread seem as if it's natural. It's just a natural part of human existence. But I think it's something that can be overcome. Then again, I'm one of those people who are often optimistic about things. Oh yes, and there was also this also talked about Kierkegaard's method of communication. He didn't believe that. He said that philosophy is too dang complicated and that you can't just tell people things. That you have to use all these weird methods to do it. And what he was referring to is he used all these personas and stuff to pseudonyms and whatnot to get his ideas out. And or he used dialogues and whatnot. And I guess I see what he means to a point, but I think philosophy can be communicated directly, although it indirectly helps too, like in the forms of fiction novels. I think both are possible. But let's see, and then oh yeah, his story was interesting. Kierkegaard was in love with this Regina Olsen chick, and then he went with her, and then he was like, right before they were about to get married, he was like, screw this, and he just left. So that was interesting. He had an interesting life. But there's also this thing called the Corsair affair, where this guy at this tabloid liked Kierkegaard and made a good book review of one of Kierkegaard's books, and Kierkegaard was like, a compliment from you is like an insult. So Corsair started to make fun of Kierkegaard a lot, even though they still like Kierkegaard. And then Kierkegaard all depressed from it, and then so Corsair kind of went under from it because they felt guilty about making life bad for a guy they kind of liked. And they did all that because they thought Kierkegaard would want to be treated like that. But I guess not. Then there's this part where he seems to be all about his metaphysics is very different from my own. He says something like, existence is a form of doing, not a form of thinking. And the rest of this chapter goes on it. But my thought is that I don't understand why they have to be different. Why can't existing be doing and thinking? Or why can't the thinking drive the doing? So he probably gives some answers in here, but I read this part like a few weeks ago. So I might have to make a part 2 on it, but it seems to be that he says objective truth is trying to figure out the what's in things, and subjective truth is figuring out how it physically happens. Which I don't see the difference too much. I don't know. Metaphysics is like that. Alright, well, see y'all later.